Hello and welcome to another video. So today we are checking out a Mecha rune. So the Machina archetype hasn't really changed for rune at all as far as decks go. I think it's definitely better than the Natura variants of rune that I've seen floating around, as it's just more stable and does the job a lot better. The only change in this has been Chaos Wielder, mainly as the replacement card for why am I completely blanking on the name? Fate. That's it, Fate's Hand. Blink. So you get to draw cards, subtract this down to 0, you get a 1-2 body, and you can potentially use it for Evo Spell Boost, which is overall a great card. I actually think it's a really nice one to have in the deck. It basically gives you everything Fate's Hand does, including a body, so you can't really go too wrong with it at all. It's a very solid card. Otherwise, the rest of the deck is very much the standard, but that seems to do pretty well in the current meta, so we're going to get right into this and check it out. So I did find some trouble getting a decent Haven and Forest match for this video. Unfortunately, I only managed to get Blood and Sword, of which I think the Sword was actually an okay matchup, and Blood was pretty mediocre. We had basically a really good start, and that kind of run the Blood player out of business quickly, so it didn't really matter too much in that situation, but it does show how strong this deck can be in the early game, and what early game plays you really want to be able to push out. For example, I really like this kind of hand where I've got Zealot, Tetra, and the Mecha Wing. Being able to play the Mecha Wing early against something like Blood or Forest is usually very powerful, since Blood and Forest both have very aggressive early game cards in most situations. So being able to counter that with an easy 1-1 drop is always an effective line of play. While I don't have a really good turn to play, the Robo-Goblin isn't a bad one. Generating a spell is always a good thing in Rune, and definitely something worth keeping. But from here on is where things get a little more interesting. So I couldn't come up with a play that I was happy with, so I went for the double Clark. One, it spell boosts 2 cards in our hand and sets up the potential damage, which is what you want against Blood. You want to have as much damage as you can possibly get out of your hand. Although I kind of wish I went for the Blood Evo play for the 4 damage instead of 2, that would have been better. And I should have drawn cards here instead of playing Ritual. That was my only other mistake for this play. Not that it was a huge impact. I did decide, however, it was time to, of course, get rid of this 1-1. Removing it from the board makes it less of a threat. We've already got a hand that we're actually pretty happy with. If we can just get Mecha Book out next turn, we're actually pretty set to wipe out any kind of Blood hand. The only real trouble is I don't want to leave all 4 of these followers up, so we are probably forced to remove these now, which we can do with the Technolord. We haven't had a lot of destroyed followers, but it was enough to trigger the effect, so that did give us the 3 in the removal. Odin, though, coming in really hard here. We actually had a reasonable game. For some reason, must have been mistaking this with another game I played when I was playing Rune. But we do fairly well. We want to take this thing out. And I would actually prefer to use the Goblin so I can get the extra heal, so that I can stay out of range of another potential Odin play. Definitely don't want to be taking another Odin to the face, that's for sure. And we're only 3 damage short from winning, which is where something like Zealot of Truth in our hand could win us the game next turn. But Blood decided to pass and concede. No surprise, obviously out of options to deal with me, which is definitely good. And while Blood is one of the weaker classes, I think that match does demonstrate how strong Rune's Machina early game can be. The Machina early game is always a really solid option when you're looking for things to play, so I do recommend it if you were playing Rune before and want to play Rune now. That for rotation, it's probably one of the stronger decks you can play from the RuneCraft's set of cards right now, at least from the decks I've tested and seen. Otherwise, I again would always recommend you play something more meta if you're interested in just purely climbing. But if you just want to have some fun and chill whack with a class that you enjoy, this is definitely not a bad option. So a rough one that we have to deal with all 3 followers here. The only real advantage is that Jet Broom is a 1-3, which means potentially it could deal with all 3 of these without much trouble. But of course, there's no guarantee there. Now, a second jump room, that's fairly decent. We should be able to hopefully be able to whittle these down enough. And we've still got our Magitech Golem. But we do have to clear out as much of this as we can. So I decided to go for the Mechanized Lifeform instead and take the draws here. I'll set up for the Mecha book play next turn instead. And we can still take out at least 3 of these followers, which is pretty respectable given the situation. So I definitely don't mind making that line of play. Elegance in Action, that's one I haven't seen much of played yet. It's a card that I actually want to be able to play more of. So the Mecha Book Sorcerer it is. I'll throw an Evo on it as well, since our opponent's really only throwing a lot of small stuff so far. So we haven't had too many big threats, which should allow us to wipe out the board fairly easily next turn. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see the Concede come down, because it's going to be very easy to wipe things like this out now that we're saving 1 play point for every card we play. And with how many cards we do have, that's a very simple option for us. So first, the Magitech Golem, and I decided to go for the Tetra, mainly because it's going to generate 2 cards along with the fact that it generates extra play points. So we're actually going to get a lot of value out of this now. Plus we can get another Delta Cannon in our hand, so that's always a good thing. They decided to heal the Tetra, not that it made a lot of difference, and guarantee the complete removal. Plus a nice Chaos Wielder to bulk our hand out, and now with a quick end we get another Delta Cannon. And that does end up causing the Sword Player to concede. Really not easy to recover from a situation like that when we could pretty much do that twice, maybe 3 times if we need to. So overall, as I mentioned in the video, the RuneCraft decks are fairly solid for the Machina archetype. If you're looking for something to play in Rune or have a mission that needs to be completed, or again, just want to have some fun with it, I definitely recommend trying this out. It seems to do okay, especially why decks aren't fully set in stone yet. Your only really difficult matchup could become Haven, as that can be a little bit of a tough one, and overall a tough one for a deck like this. Even with some of its good removal options, you could just run into where you get bodied too early on. Roach, of course, always has the potential to roach you down too early, but this deck does mitigate that fairly well with some decent board presence, which can make it a little more trickier. If you want to include a couple of wards as well, you could potentially do that and potentially block out that damage. But again, then you'd be sacrificing utility for this, so that comes down to you as well. So really tricky, honestly, to put this in a good spot. But I do enjoy Chaos Wielder as an addition, and seems to do fairly well overall. Not really necessarily positive, but I would say somewhere in the 40% to 50% range, in that gap there. Usually I can get a decent win out of it. So if you guys did enjoy this video, hit the like button, subscribe, you'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time guys, see ya.